Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about wellness checks, all of those pesky doctor appointments that most of us hate doing in midlife, but which seem to increase in frequency as we get older. Join us as we share what's recommended, as well as stories of our own doctor experiences. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about wellness checks, all those pesky doctor appointments that most of us hate doing in midlife, but which seem to increase in frequency as we get older. All the screenings and tests and doctor visits that many of us feel actual physical dread when we think about even scheduling them. Like, I know my stomach gets in knots and I look for any excuse. Oh, I don't have time to schedule. I don't even have time to call the office. I don't even want to have to pick a day.
We're so busy.
Yep.
Yes. So we just thought, let's have an episode. There is comfort in knowing that other people feel the exact same way that you do. And maybe we'll be able to urge or encourage somebody to make an appointment that they've been putting off. And at least you'll know that other people feel the exact same way about all of these different tests. And we also want to tell you some stories about different doctors' experiences we've had, maybe some things that we've learned along the way. So we think this will be a good episode.
Positive peer pressure when it comes to all this.
Yes. All right. So Julie, you were the one that really got us thinking about doctors in midlife. And Julie, you're married to a doctor. So you shouldn't fear going to the doctor. Do you fear like we do?
Oh, yeah, that doesn't really change anything. Yeah, I think when I was younger, I used to fear going to the doctor. I remember being little and just always being afraid and sitting in the pediatrician's office with my mom saying, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Am I going to get a shot? Am I going to,
Right.
And then that fear really never left me, like 20s and early 20s. But now the dread is more like what they will find. It's not about the discomfort or the unpleasantness of it. It's more like, what are they going to find?
Right.
So, yeah, but I'm definitely going to more doctors, not just myself, like through your 20s, you're just going to your OB, just once a year, maybe a dermatologist occasionally, things are rocking along. And now I counted up, I see 5 different types of doctors. And then there's mammogram, dentist, and eye doctor on top of that.
Oh.
And I'm taking my mom to several doctors, and I'm taking John to doctors. So 1 week last month, I was at a doctor appointment every day of the week.
Oh,
between the two of them, or maybe the 3 of us. I'm not sure. But
do you think at the end of this, they'll give you an honorary medical degree?
I don't know. I thought maybe there's some kind of business opportunity out there where I can help people navigate how to see doctors and survive.
Mindy, how do you feel about the doctor?
The first thing that came to mind was this is the number one stressor when you move. Because, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how stressful it is to have to find a whole new set of doctors, not only for yourself, but for your husband and for your children. Getting recommendations, getting established. There are so many appointments in that first probably 6 months of moving. And, then there's just insurance, all the paperwork. I mean, when I have finally gotten everybody through every appointment and all the paperwork and everybody's established, I just feel like I should take a vacation.
That is true.
It's awful.
Yes.
Now, are you good about doing it for yourself, or are you more motivated to do it for your kids? I mean,
well, thankfully, I'm good about doing it for myself because lessons learned, that you need to go ahead and be established, at least with the primary care and an OBGYN as a woman, before something happens, because you cannot wait until something is off and then try to get established. It takes a long time to get established, actually.
Yeah, true.
My husband had skipped a few years, and then when I wanted him, then they had already knocked him off the rolls. So he wasn't established anymore. So it's important to at least go, I think, every 2 years, or they knock you off and then they don't consider you a regular patient. And if you're sick, they don't want to take you,
Right.
So it's important.
I'll add to that too. If you lose your place, they may not have room in their schedule anymore. And if you live in a small town like I do, you might end up at an urgent care, whereas it'd been a lot cheaper had you gotten established with a primary care.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say, maybe being married to a doctor just does change my opinions, because I just think it is important for that continuity of care. Like, sure, you can go to a walk-in clinic and get treated for your cold or your stomach bug or your sore ankle or whatever, like you'll probably get good treatment, but it's just better when you're being seen by the same person year after year after year, and they know you and they know your history, and they really can pick up on patterns and changes. I mean, even mental health, they can notice things. But if you're just always going to somebody that doesn't know you,
some
I just don't think that's as good.
Crack. Yeah.
Yeah. And doctors do pick up on things just in conversation, that you might not even be there for that reason, but then they can pick up on things. And, you want to find it before it becomes more serious.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. All right, well, let's talk about what we're supposed to be doing. And Julie, you came up with a little checklist. So as we mentioned, we should be doing our annual well visit. As much as I hate having to fast, take my blood work, go in, like, I seriously dread that, but it is important.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys do your annual well visits?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I did miss COVID year.
Okay.
And so I actually haven't been back. So I have fallen off
you've fallen
the
through
charts,
the cracks, Julie.
Yeah. So like, that's why I wanted to do this episode, because I know this will inspire me to go back. I think I did see her for a sick visit during COVID, but I haven't done the whole, wellness check.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so this would be like just your primary care, just that you have somebody to call if you have strep throat or a UTI or something where it's like, hey, can you see me today? Can you call me in a prescription? Like, I'm on your books. I'm a patient, just to stay established. So anyways, you guys are relatively good about that. Julie, she's going to get back on the bandwagon. All right, let's talk about different cancer screenings. Julie, do you want to go through those with us?
Okay, yeah. I just started thinking about all the doctors that we need to see, and GYN kind of just came up first. Actually, at this moms group that I'm a part of, the speaker this week was a GYN. And it was just really good. She just went through all the things and why you do it. And a lot of things, the recommendations have changed. So I call my GYN doctor appointment the annual exam, but really the pap smear is now every 3 years. And it could be 5, depending on what they're testing for in that culture. But, and you only need to do it till you're 65. And you're done. Which I don't think I realized that.
I didn't realize you get to stop doing that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I thought if you still had a cervix, you still had to keep going, but maybe not.
Well, and then
good news.
But if you're thinking, oh, good, I don't need to go to my OBGYN every year, you really should have a breast exam, like a manual breast exam every year. So that, and you could get that at an internist if you just didn't want to go to a GYN anymore. But that's really important because I don't know, that is another reason, like continuity of care, having the same person kind of seeing you regularly and noticing changes that they may have noticed since the last time. The next big one for me is the mammogram. You should be having a baseline at 40, and then every year, like if you're just at average risk, every year. And I did ask John that because I hear people saying, oh, you can go every 2, but he said the American College of Radiology has never changed from yearly. Just certain people have said, so I always go with whatever's recommended there. And I do hear a lot of people complaining about mammograms. So I did pick John's brain about this a little, like why the compression? People complain about that. And he said, it's just the more compression and the more uncomfortable, you're actually getting a better quality exam. So I've always just said, I've just kind of grinned and bared it, like, okay, go ahead, like compress, because I want the best picture.
The part that messes with me the most is when they tell you to hold your breath.
I know.
I always feel like I'm going to pass out.
I know, because she'll say that, and then she's still got to walk around behind that machine. It's like, I've been holding my breath.
I know.
I know someone who did pass out and broke their back in the mammogram room. I think of her every year. Every year I think of her.
I'm just like, if I pass out, the only thing holding me up is this, and then I'm going to be lopsided by the time I'm done.
She'd probably put a wall behind you or a stool or something.
Yes.
That's funny. Gosh, that's not funny. That's really terrible, but
Sorry.
I just can't.
Yeah.
That's awful, Marie. Oh.
I know.
Yeah. And he said the compression, just makes it a uniform thickness so you can see, so that the x-rays go through it evenly and you're just able to pick up smaller and smaller things that way. And it just eliminates motion, because if there's any motion, like even by breathing, it makes it a little blurry. So you want the crisper, clear image. Mm-hmm. And another funny thing that he said, that's, I think I even said this on the other day at that talk where we were talking about mammograms, and somebody said something like, "Oh, the man that invented that thing," and John said it was actually a woman that invented the compression, and she designed it in her garage with plywood paddles. The prototype was just
Interesting.
So you can only blame a woman for it. So,
well, she knew what we needed, apparently.
Yeah. So I don't dread the mammogram as far as discomfort or even awkwardness, but I just always think about what they might, what they might find.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The next one would be colonoscopy if you're 50 and you're at average risk.
And they have changed that, Julie. They changed it to 45.
45?
My sister's 45 this year, and she was recommended to go. I think because they were seeing higher incidences in younger people, so they kind of changed it. But it's only within the last 5 years that they changed that.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then depending, I think it's, if everything's normal and you're at average risk, it's every 10 years now. And that's higher than it used to be, a longer time than it used to be. But then if they were, if they have to remove certain kinds of polyps, you may have to come back as early as 3 years. So that's where I am. So I'm due to schedule that. And then the last one that I came up with was the dermatologist for just a mole check, and I really get worked up over this one because I just remember those posters that they have in there, all the criteria: irregular border, odd color, bumpy. And then all mine look like that. It's I start to imagine this tiny little thing. I get it all blown up in my mind. And then the doctor walks in and hardly looks at it and says, that's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I get very worked up over, I think everything's a malignant melanoma. So,
oh no.
And I was going every year for that. And then my dermatologist 2 years ago was like, "Marie, you don't really need to come every year." She goes,
"No,
I'd recommend every 2. So, you might ask, am I someone that falls into the every year or not? It was nice of her to tell me that, because it's not like I love going. So
it depends on how many moles you have. And,
Right. So there can be some flexibility in these guidelines depending on what your personal risk factors are.
I'll say full disclosure, this is the one I have not established yet.
Dermatologist? Okay.
I'm just in the order of things. It's not that important, but I'll get to it. I mean, my husband needs to get in there. I mean, he's got red hair and very pale skin. He's the poster child for being needed to be seen at the dermatologist every year, probably. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I felt like we lived there when my kids were teenagers, and you get kind of burnt out,
Yeah.
I really felt like she was a friend by the end. I seriously was going every month for multiple kids. She knew when my kids were going to college, their whole senior year. It was oh, well, what are you doing now? The dermatologist can really become your friend when you have teenagers.
We even had virtual visits that we had to finish once we moved here. So I just was kind of burnt out. I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, and I have asked my internist about skin things. They can answer things too. They can give you a general oh yeah, you do need to go see about this or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I know you had eyesight on there too, Julie, and I need to make an eye exam. And the thing that puts me off about that is I hate having my eyes dilated. I hate how I have to feel the rest of the day.
Oh, I never do that anymore.
Yeah, I know. Some doctors do it, some doctors
have the other
don't.
Option. Yeah.
Yeah, but the doctor I've been going to still likes to do that and the dilation. But I just hate the dilation, but I know I need to.
I know. I guess I'm feeling convicted again. I haven't been to the eye doctor here. And I'm wearing glasses for when I read and drive at night. And apparently I needed them to pass my driver's test.
Ooh, Mindy.
The vision test this time. This is bad. I'm wearing glasses from like 4 years ago. Okay. Yeah, they're good.
I feel like with eyes, it's kind of self-limiting. Like you don't feel like you're going to die from anything necessarily. It's just you can't see,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Things are a little fuzzy. It's fine.
I can accommodate. I can squint.
Right.
It's more vanity that sends me to the eye doctor because my glasses, when they go out of style, is when I think, I should go have an eye test done.
Yeah. I do though, when I do I don't know what it's called. I don't have my eyes dilated. They just put you up to the machine and take this picture of your retina. Mm-hmm. And I've been told, and this is another reason to go regularly, is I have a freckle on my retina.
Oh, who would know?
That's fun.
So she watches it to make sure it doesn't get bigger. So
interesting.
Apparently you can have melanoma on your retina. So
oh my!
This is not encouraging for listeners, Julie.
My goodness.
Well, I'm not going to hide anything. I mean, you can. That's why you should go to the doctor. So get those retinas checked. I would like to say too that you need to find a doctor that you like and you trust. I hear so many people talking about not trusting their doctor, not liking them. Then why are you going? Like, there are great doctors out there. You just need to find one. So that when you're well, that gives you a little more time to try people out. Like, don't give up. Mm-hmm. Don't let a bad experience just say I'm done and I'm not going, use the time that you're well to find one that you really like.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the reasons that we might be deferring or neglecting making our doctor's appointments. What are some reasons that keep you guys, other than just the natural dread or fear, what else keeps you from making an appointment?
Well, specifically, I could think about the dentist because there was a time period, I think, when my kids were kind of in those middle years where I didn't go to the dentist for 4 or 5 years. And it was because, first of all, I hate going. I really am afraid of the dentist. And it was expensive. Like once you were taking all your kids twice a year, we did not have dental insurance. And I knew I wasn't going to neglect them going. So it was really easy to just say, I can wait. And I even remember the receptionist saying, hey, we need to see you too, Mom, and I was like, oh, yeah. And I did learn a lesson, and I thought, I'm never making this mistake again. Because when I finally went, I had lots of issues, like things that took months of repeated visit, crowns, a root canal, and that would have been better to just nip in the bud when they were little issues. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think until sometimes it takes learning a difficult lesson like that. But it kind of was cost. I mean, cost and just the time.
Mm-hmm. A lot of that for me is preventative medicine. Sometimes you don't see the need for it because there's not an active problem. But actually, even going to the dentist every 6 months helps prevent future problems. Like it costs a whole lot less to keep up with it than it does to make up for it. I think about, and it could cost, I was thinking about some insurance companies will have certain rules that don't necessarily line up with what your doctor recommends. So if your doctor is asking you to come once a year and the insurance company says, no, you only need it every 3 years. Well, you'd have to pay for those extra visits. And navigating insurance in and of itself is confusing. It's a headache, and you're on the phone. It feels like half the day to get any kind of answer. So anything that involves insurance can be very frustrating. So that alone would keep me from seeking medical help.
Yeah, I would say that is the number one, even over my fear. The number one reason why I don't want to deal with going to the doctor is because I hate the insurance process. Sometimes it's very seamless. And sometimes what you did last year and you do it the exact same way and now it's not paid for or now it's not covered or your husband's company switched plans and now you have a new insurance network to learn. And like, I would say that is my number one reason that I don't like to go.
Yes.
Like my daughter over Christmas break, she kept complaining about her knee. I was like, oh, I don't want to go because I know they're going to say, oh, you need an MRI. And then I'm going to pay through the nose for an MRI. And then they're going to say, well, there's nothing really wrong here. You should probably just rest it. And I just knew that was how it was going to go. But of course, my daughter kept on saying, but my knee hurts. And I was like, well, she's only home for 6 weeks, so I've got to go ahead and do this. And I don't know why, because my insurance didn't change. And last year, I had to pay a lot for MRIs. And this year, for some reason, the copay for her knee MRI was only $50. I don't know why it changed. So all that dread of thinking I'll have to pay hundreds of dollars for the MRI. And so I went up to the counter because you pay before they do it. And they're like, $50. I said, $50? I said, that doesn't really sound right. Like,
don't argue,
like cheaper than the copay for the specialist. Like, are you sure you entered that in right? Because I don't want a surprise bill. And but yet other things I might pay an astronomical amount for. So that's why it's so confusing. Like, you just don't even want to get on the path because you know there's going to be something you didn't plan for.
And especially frustrating that you can't even figure it out. You know, like it's not knowable.
No, it's not knowable. I have no idea what's different. The plan is the exact same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then the time that it takes, you know, like it takes a lot of time to schedule, to figure out if you can pay for it. Your daughter's only home a certain amount of time. Heaven forbid you have like pets or younger children you have to find care for, you know, to go to the doctor. And it's just this whole thing. And that what you said about there's probably nothing wrong, that keeps me from going so often, or for scheduling for my children, because I think it's just a growing pain, you know?
Yeah.
If it doesn't go away in 3 months, then maybe I'll call.
Yes. So no, I totally relate.
This probably resonates with a lot of people in midlife is if you're not taking your kids to the doctor, you might be taking a parent to the doctor, either taking them physically or just going along. You know, it's always good to have another set of ears at an appointment to listen to the doctor and make sense of what he's saying. So that could be another reason. I mean, that is probably why I haven't scheduled a colonoscopy, is because when would I do it? You know, like it's hard to know even to schedule something in the future. If I'm at a doctor 3 days a week now, I don't know, you know what I mean, how we would work that out. So that can be intimidating, and it's easy to just say, well, these are must-dos. I can wait.
Right. Yeah. Another thing that keeps me is sometimes just plain ignorance. I don't know which doctor I should go to. You know, is this something that I'll need a specialist for? And if I don't need a referral, then I'm not sure who to call. You know, if you need a referral, then the primary care doctor can help you navigate that. And thankfully, there's like online tools now that I would just shoot off a message to my primary care and say, all right, I have this issue, you know, in my whatever. Is this a neurologist? Is this an ENT? Is this a dentist? Is it like, what is this? It's in my head somewhere.
That's true. Because you don't want to go to all the trouble of waiting for an appointment and paying for them to say, oh, well, I'm not really the doctor that you're supposed to see.
How are we supposed to know? I mean, there's some doctors on my street. They told me what kind of doctor they are, and I just don't even know what that is.
And I hope I never need them.
That's a good thing.
All right. Well, how do you guys keep track of all these appointments? Julie, I know you've got a million appointments. I mean, I write them down in a calendar, which I feel like is pretty basic, but is there something elevated that someone could do?
Well, you know, I remember a long time ago, and I don't think doctors do this anymore, but I would go to my OB and I'd fill out a little card and it was stamped and they would mail it to me like the next year. And I loved that.
Yeah, that was a good way.
They have not done that in a while. So, you know, I keep a paper calendar, but if you're making an appointment for next year, you don't have a paper calendar necessarily that has that month on it. So I fall through the cracks there, but I've started just entering it in my phone at the checkout desk. You know, I don't take the little appointment card, stick it in my purse, and then add it on later. Like I add it in my phone there and then set a reminder. You know, like if say the appointment's 6 months or a year from now, I'll set a reminder before that, so I can get it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But one thing I thought was just such a great idea. I'd heard somebody doing this and did not turn out to be good. Like, set all your wellness check and your cancer screenings and all like in a specific month every year, so you just know. And they had made it their birthday month, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I thought, why would I ruin my birthday month with 4 big doctor's appointments? Like, November is my favorite month of the year, and it was seriously putting a damper on the festivities. So
sure,
I did not do birthday month anymore. So I really can honestly say I don't have a great method for keeping track, because like right now I don't know what my gastroenterologist said about that colonoscopy. I know I had polyps, so I think he said 3, maybe 4. Well, I can't even remember what year it was. Was it 18, 19? So I know I'm coming up. So I just have to call the doctor and say, hey, when did you last see me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a terrible method, but because once you get so many, like this year I was thinking, I'm doing great. I've already seen my internist, already seen my GYN, already had my mammogram. And then I thought, okay, didn't go to the eye doctor, haven't been to the dentist, and I still need a colonoscopy. Like, you think you're on top of it, but the more you have, there's a lot to keep up with. Okay. And then one last thing that I put down for things that we should be doing regularly is immunizations. For me, I get the flu shot every year. And I know they do recommend it, over, I don't know if it's over 50. I am also considering the shingles vaccine because they recommend that over 50. And, but once again, COVID, I felt like I had enough vaccines, so I haven't done that yet. But I just have known that shingles can be extremely painful, and I don't want to get it. So that's something I'm going to do a little research on and probably get.
All right, well, let's talk about some funny, scary, interesting stories that we have to share about going to the doctor, because I know that I want to hear what your experiences have been.
Who's going first?
All right, well, I can start out. Okay, so I'll start out with one that happened in my 20s, and I am a skeptical person. So I feel like I go to the doctor with a lot of skepticism. I wonder, are they telling me this because they believe this is best for me, because they're trying to cover their butt for future lawsuits, or because the government is pushing a certain narrative and they're forced to go along with it? I don't just take what they say and be like, okay, let me do that. That's just my personality.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe some of that was created when in my 20s, my mother thought that my thyroid looked enlarged. So I went and had some blood drawn. And I can't even remember what the numbers were now. But after seeing some specialists, the consensus was that I should have my thyroid removed. And that just did not sit right with me. I'm in my 20s. Mm-hmm. I feel fine. It wasn't even like I was having a problem. And so I just decided I wasn't going to do that. And I was talking to a nurse practitioner friend who worked with a general practice doctor in a small town office. And she said that he was very patient and open to discussion and new ideas. And she thought that he might be able to find the problem, or at least adequately explain to me why I should take my thyroid out. I at least needed someone to give me some pretty good reasons why this might be the right thing to do. And I went to him, and he took such a thorough history, and he was so willing to talk. And he kind of said at the end of this one visit, he said, you know what? He said, I've been doing some research, and I think this, and this was almost 30 years ago, you guys, so I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about, he thought that I kind of had a thyroid infection, or a little flare-up from coming off birth control pills. And he said that he felt that if we monitored it for a few months, that we would see those levels come back down. And if they didn't come back down, I could always revisit getting my thyroid out. And I was like, yes, thank you. I am more than willing to come back and have my levels drawn. And within 3 months, my levels were normal. But if I had gone with the specialist, what the specialist said, I would have been walking around for the last 30 years without a thyroid. And that just did not sit well with me. I felt like that was a gross, overboard diagnosis without even considering, could we follow this young woman for a little bit of time? Could we see if this is necessary? I mean, when I told the specialist I didn't want to do that, she looked at me like, well, I can't help you then. Like, basically, you're
right.
silly to not be following my instructions, and there's nothing more I can do for you. And I'm so glad I didn't follow her instructions.
Yeah, I would definitely say always get a second opinion. And if, especially, like, I know I've had part of my thyroid removed just in the last couple of years, but my doctor watched it for 10 years. And my thyroid levels are normal. Like mine, that wasn't the issue. But he watched it for 10 years and he was like, I just think we're good. Let's just keep watching it, and then it grew very much in a short time. And he goes, I think it needs to come out. But I always choose the more conservative. I always want a doctor who's going to choose the more conservative approach. For sure.
Right.
Yes, because you can't put the thyroid back in. So let's make pretty sure that we really need to take this out. So that's just one kind of scary. Yeah.
Yeah, any kind of surgery is
and it's
dangerous.
Not a simple surgery. Yeah, it's not.
And I didn't like the attitude. It was like, no big deal. We have medication for that now. We can basically substitute for the thyroid. I'm pretty young. I don't want to be on that for the next 60 years. So anyways, that was kind of a scary one. But anyways, I have some other stories to share too, but what's a story that you guys have?
I had kind of the worst case scenario happen on my 40th when I had to have my first mammogram. And it's what every woman dreads. And it happened to me. And they were like, oh, we see a little something come back. Let's just make sure the scan is right. I'm like, okay. Thought nothing of it. Then it was, oh, come back again. And I was like, is this normal? I've been here like 3 times. And then it was, we're going to recommend you to a specialist. And I was like, okay, thankfully I really liked him. And then it was a needle core biopsy, which was highly uncomfortable. And then it was these specialty tests after that. And then it was a lumpectomy.
Oh my goodness.
I was just like, this was not what I was expecting. I mean, none of that was what I was expecting. And I think I lived in denial for a while. And also like the doctor never really was clear about, well, what does this mean? And I just felt like they just kept trying to figure out what we were dealing with. So I already knew amongst all of this that I was now in the high risk category for breast cancer. But also, I mean, it was pretty scary because I even had to have an oncologist visit, and that's sobering. It's very sobering to pull in, and they have special parking when you're seeing the oncologist. And I just thought, is this my life? So that was extremely worrisome during that time, and I really couldn't talk about it to anybody because I just still didn't know what we were dealing with. Abby was a freshman in college. We had just moved. I mean, blah, blah, blah. 3 kids at home. The answer was, okay, well, there's nothing active, but we highly recommend that you take this cancer preventative medicine. And you guys, looking at the side effects of this medicine was really scary. And Bryce and I had some long discussions about all of the effects that this medicine would have on my daily life, really. And so we both opted that I would rather live every day and feel like myself and deal with it in the future if something were to happen than to alter my everyday life with a medicine. And so that was something that I kind of took the chance. Again, you have to make your own decisions about what to do. And then we moved and COVID hit, and I went a couple of years before I could actually go back to the doctor. And that was really scary because this was just kind of looming, holding my breath thinking, well, they canceled my appointments because of COVID, but I don't know if I'm dealing with something here. You know what I mean? Like it just hit right then. So, praise the Lord, everything is fine. And it was something that then after COVID, I got in right away and they kept an eye, and now I'm fully established. It's something they know about, we're watching. But, everything's fine, but it is something that we have to watch. And so I'm just truly thankful. I'm thankful that that it was in place to go at 40. I would not have gone. Right. I didn't feel like anything was wrong. I could have never known. It was not something I felt in a self-exam. And now we know. And it's not so scary knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my scary story.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was scary because you're thinking, this is just my baseline to get me started. And, like nothing's going to be wrong at this age.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was very healthy and very healthy. I was not expecting that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a scary story, but I have kind of a funny story.
Okay.
Ooh, let's hear it.
And I might have shared this before. I don't know, but, I told you I get kind of worked up over skin things. So I asked John, I said, I want a good medical dermatologist. I don't want these aesthetic dermatologists that are focused on skincare. Like, I want a good medical dermatologist. So he said, well, I've got one and I'll give you his name, but you're not going to like him because he's really gruff. And I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I just want the truth. And I don't want Botox and all this stuff. I'm just wanting him to look at my skin, so I go and it's at a medical center, like a teaching medical center. So they asked me if I would be okay with medical students to observe. So I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for medical students because John was once a medical student and I've heard all his stories. So I said, sure, I'm going to help the world have better doctors. So I'm sitting on the crinkly paper in the paper gown opening in the front and in a tiny, tiny exam room. And in walks the doctor with 4 male medical students.
Oh my.
They look 18. They they were probably 20.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, the sweat just started pouring. And I just thought, oh my goodness, because I had asked for a total body check. And apparently that means they will look anywhere and everywhere. So
oh my goodness, Julie.
And this is like, okay, open up the gown, drop it, and then you're just sitting there and they're not being asked to do anything. They're just like standing there staring,
Oh.
So like he looks and I think he, then I stuck out my leg. He looked at my leg and then I think he looked around on my back. And then I just said, I think we're done here. I think you've seen enough. And he goes, well, a lot of people opt, for total body, but I get it. Like if you just, I've looked at all the areas of concern and I said, yeah, we're done.
Oh my goodness.
It was so humiliating. And I know from John's stories that doctors they've seen it all. They've heard it all. They are not thinking like we are thinking, but still, I mean, they were just so young. They look like my sons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And they might not have seen enough to be jaded yet. And so they might be thinking differently than the 50-year-old doctor. So yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to crawl in a hole.
Oh, that's so embarrassing.
So think twice before you say, yes, a medical student can be in the room.
Yeah, I've had a medical student a couple times. Well, different times, but like one in particular I wish I would have said no to was at the birth of my first child. Not the time to have a medical student. Of course, I don't know what birth is like, so I think, sure. And then,
how bad could it be?
Yeah. And then another time was when I was having another gynecological procedure, and I'm like, this was a mistake. Like, I know they have to train people, but I don't want to be the one they're training on. But I had already said yes, so I was kind of stuck.
I know when I had surgery, the first surgery I'd ever had, I can't remember. I think it was a new nurse, a nursing student. They said, she is going to start your IV. And I never have trouble getting an IV started. I don't think it's painful, and I was like, okay. But I am very nervous because I'm about to have major surgery, And she just keeps poking and poking and it's hurting. And I look down and the floor is covered in blood. Like something has gone wrong. And John is in the room and I give him the eyes and I'm like, I said, call someone else. Get this girl out of here. I can't do this. So he had to call my doctor and they had an anesthesiologist come in and he got it in like 2 seconds and it didn't hurt or anything. And I felt bad for her, but it was like, oh, this is just not the time. This is, enough. I don't need to see a puddle of blood in the floor.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Talking about the birth of the child, Marie, I had, I can't even remember which kid, but there was a nurse and she came in and she decided to hang out in my room because I was so nice compared to the other moms giving birth. And I was like, really? Like she was hiding, acting like she was doing something, but she was sitting there with me because I was so nice.
Right.
Like I didn't appreciate that. And then with Abby, with my firstborn, I didn't know any better about advocating for yourself. I was 21 when I had Abby, and my anesthesiologist couldn't get the epidural in, and he kept telling me it was my fault. And he was so rude. And Bryce was not allowed to be in the room at the time. So there was no one there to advocate for me. And after Abby's birth, Bryce counted, I had over 40 scabs down my back.
Goodness.
From him trying to give me an epidural. And it could have been seriously
you can really do some
lifelong
damage.
Injury.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
So that was another, like, I'm just thankful I survived.
Yeah. Well, another interesting story that has taught me to listen to your gut was when my daughter was 11 months and 2 weeks, she got a UTI. And I remember she woke up from a nap with a very dirty diaper. And then I went away and she got sick while I was gone. And I took her to the pediatrician when I got back, because I think it was like over a weekend, and we just kept calling and they kept saying, oh, fever meds, UTI never even crossed my mind. Finally, when she wasn't getting better and I took her in, I said, she has something wrong, and the doctor immediately said, let's test her for a UTI. So anyways, it comes back positive. And she said, well, because she's under a year, we need to recommend that you do this test, which was like going to the hospital. I think they had to inject dye into like her kidneys and see which way it flows. If she was over a year, we could just say this was a UTI. And I should have listened to my gut and just said, you know what? You're trying to cover your butt here because she's 2 weeks away from the cutoff. And I know that there's a circumstance that could have very easily created this UTI, and she's never had a problem before that. I should have said, you know what, let's just wait and see if she ever gets another one. But instead, I put her through the test because the doctor recommended it. And when you have a baby, you don't want to go against what the doctor said. But I should have just listened to my gut. And now I do more like, does this sound like a covering their butt recommendation? Or like it could be a true problem? Because she was 2 weeks from the cutoff. Like, I feel like the pediatrician should have said, but if I was the mom, I might wait and see if she gets another one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think you do have to listen to your gut on some of those things, because there's a lot of things that they say because they don't want to be sued. And maybe it's not even really a necessary test.
Right.
So I'm sure that other people have run into things like that over the years, but I just say, like, if you feel uncomfortable, like Julie said before, maybe get a second opinion before you have that big test or do that big thing, because you probably feel off for a reason.
Right.
Yeah, I would say, most things can wait a few, most things aren't like do this tomorrow or you're going to die. Most things can wait a few weeks. Even a cancer diagnosis, you can have a second opinion,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one funny story I have is that when I was pregnant with the twins, of course, I hate going to the doctor. So even the OB, I just don't like going. So I go to get like the official starting, but I already knew I was pregnant. And she's feeling around and she said, I just feel like, I don't know the correct terminology, but like the uterus feels a little big. I think I should send you over for a vaginal ultrasound. And I hate tests. So I was like, I said, is there a problem? Or, she goes, well, it's kind of big. Maybe it's twins. And I said, I thought to myself, what are the likelihood of that? I said, well, if it's just that you're worried about, I said, I don't want to have the ultrasound. And I said, do I have to have it? And she said, well, no, you don't have to. And I said, okay, I won't bother. And I never gave it one more thought. I mean, I left that appointment. I never gave it one more thought. Saw her through the whole first half of the pregnancy, went for the 20-week ultrasound, and I'm pregnant with twins. And when I heard that, I immediately thought back to my very first visit where she had wanted me to see. But, I was kind of glad I didn't know all that time because it just would have caused a lot of stress and worry. It never even crossed my mind again, so I only had to know about it from the halfway point on. But that's just a funny story because my personality is always to avoid the tests. And in that point, the doctor really was right.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I had a funny, kind of not funny situation. So last year, Bryce and I had our 25th anniversary trip in Arizona. And just before I left, I kind of thought my cycle might be off a little bit. And then once we got to Arizona, I knew my cycle was off. And I ended up taking countless pregnancy tests on my 25th anniversary trip. And they were all negative, but I knew something was off. And so this made for very interesting conversation between Bryce and I, who are getting close to empty nest.
Right.
At that point, our youngest child was 14 and we had 2 out of the house. And so this was very interesting, conversation. And there were a couple of sleepless nights, though we did, very much enjoy our trip. That's what we both remember about the trip. Well, when we finally got back home and I was able to get in to see my doctor and everything, I broke out in a sweat for a second when he's doing the ultrasound. He's like, well, I found your baby. There's your cyst. Like he said the words.
I found your baby.
I was and he's kind of a jokester, he has a great personality. But at that moment, all I heard was, and I'm looking at the ultrasound with him, I know what a baby looks like. And I see this sac thing. And I'm like, okay, it kind of looks like a baby, but I don't see So he prints out pictures. He said, and he knows Bryce, they work together. So he prints out pictures of my baby cyst so that I can take it home to Bryce and show him. So everything was okay. We were not pregnant, but it was quite an interesting time.
Yes. And made for a memorable trip.
Oh, yeah. Quite memorable.
All right. Well, those stories are funny. And really, your experiences with doctors over the years shape the next doctor visit you go and how you feel about it. And then the next one. And so if people have certain views about the doctor, you can probably figure out why, just if they share a few stories. Yeah. But anyways, what are some advice or encouragement to leave with listeners?
Well, I would just say after going to so many doctors with my mom, more so my mom than John, because John just kind of, I don't feel like I have to advocate for John at all. He's, he already knows, But with my mom, I try to have a list of questions before we get there and write them down. Because she's always saying, I want to ask him this and this, and you think you'll remember, but you don't.
You don't.
So, write them down. And then I like to mention, I've read about this in the news, or I heard about this thing, or I know someone that, tried this. What do you think? I just like to bring those things up, and then always take notes, because you also think you'll remember what they said to do, or what to go home and read, or what to, to try. So, just do that. And lastly, I would just say, I know I told you I was embarrassed at the dermatologist, but really you shouldn't be. Your doctor has seen it all and heard it all, and don't be embarrassed.
Yes.
Tell them everything.
That was going to be my thing is they can't read your mind. You really have to advocate for yourself. That's something I had to learn with age and maturity. And it's just, you have to speak up. If you feel like something's not right, check it out, and don't let it go. They're not going to advocate for you. They don't know how you feel. And so another thing is, before you leave the doctor, and if it's one that you're going to have to see again in a year or 5 years, schedule the appointment and put it in your phone before you leave. A lot of times they'll say, do you just want to call when it's time? And I always say, no, I'd like to schedule now, because I know I won't remember. And it'll be hanging over my head. What was the month I was supposed to go to the whatever? And the other thing is to try not to schedule your appointments during cold and flu season. Even if you have a child that has a birth date that's during, kind of like you, Julie, that's during cold and flu season, sometimes, especially as the child gets older and you don't have to have immunizations during that checkup, it's great to wait until the summer when there's not so many people sick at the doctor, because you don't want to catch something while you're there.
True.
Yeah, that's true. One time my daughter caught pink eye because I took her along for her younger brother's 2-week checkup, and 24 hours later she woke up with pink eye, and then I think Steve got pink eye.
Yes.
And like that was the only place we'd been that week because we just had a newborn. So yeah, you can definitely pick up things, especially little kids crawling around on the floor or using the toys they have out.
But I always love how the little waiting room has the sick section and the well, and they're about 2 feet apart.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
I just want to offer encouragement to, again, I say, listen to your gut, get second opinions. Last year, I was dealing with an issue where I had been recommended to have a hysterectomy. And I know plenty of people have them, but for me, I wanted to avoid it. And I went to 3 different gynecologists, and they all said the same thing. And I still wasn't willing to do it. And Julie's husband helped me figure out how to get in to see someone who offered this other procedure that I wanted to do. And I ended up going with that. Now, I might have to have a hysterectomy at some point, but I did not want to remove that before I knew that was my very last resort, because I can't put it back in.
Right.
Well, listeners, if you have any stories you want to share with us or any encouragement in this area, you can find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Well, I'm a fan of a book called All My Knotted Up Life, and it's a memoir by Beth Moore. I listened to the audiobook, which I loved because she reads it. I didn't realize she's from Arkansas. I always thought she was from Texas, but mentions that as she's younger, she uses her Arkansas twang. And as the book, as she matures and grows, she evolves into her Texas accent.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know. I just had heard hints of things, that had happened to her in her past, but never really knew the whole story. And she just felt like it was time in her life, after certain people had passed on in her life, that it was time to tell her story. And I just had no idea. I mean, when you see somebody, a very public figure like her, and who is a very gifted Bible teacher, you just assume certain things about their life. You do. Not even just their past, because she can't help her past, but like things, even just struggles that she had, like marriage-wise and stuff. It was just very eye-opening. And I'll just say that she's an excellent writer. She is hysterical. And just her choice, her way with words is very funny. So if you do want to read it, I really recommend listening to it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I listened to that book too, and I thought it was a very quick listen. I think it was like 7 hours. So it went by really fast, and it was pretty fast paced, and you do get a lot of insights into her life. I thought it was definitely worth reading.
Yeah, John's listening to it now, so I'm actually hearing it twice. So, which I don't mind. Like it's really good.
Yeah. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a new product, new to me, I guess. My washer and dryer are both size extra large, because when we bought them a couple of years ago, like we do so much laundry that we needed the biggest capacity possible. So in the dryer, what that meant is that I would need I a lot of times would use 2 bounce sheets in the dryer, because that's what I use, to, first static and freshen and all that stuff. So recently I have switched to the Bounce Wrinkle Guard Mega Sheet. So what that means is instead of using 2 or 3, sometimes bounce sheets in the dryer, I'm using 1, and it's big, and I love them.
Yeah.
Because I have so much laundry. Now this would not be probably good if you barely have anything in there. Sure. I don't know. But to me, it's like, okay, there's just 1 sheet. It's mega. I'm good to go. So
you don't have to search
I've been
for 3.
A fan. I know. I've been a fan of the mega sheet. So that has recently changed my laundry habit with the dryer.
Now, do you feel like it really does protect against wrinkles?
Well, if I take the clothes out right away, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
It does. If it happens to be a day that they sit there for a little while, then I'm going to have to kind of start that back. I need to start the dryer up for at least 10 minutes.
Okay. I always am curious about claims that products make. Is it true?
Yes.
It's true if you're following the instructions to the letter.
Just exactly. User error over here. Yeah.
All right. I racked my brain for a product that I was a fan of. And I don't know. My brain is just on. I can't think of anything. But I did want to say that I am not a big fan of traveling. I hate sleeping away from home. Mm-hmm. I signed up for this Bible study at the beginning of fall last year. And one of the things you had to commit to was a weekend away, like a retreat. And I thought, that's all the way in March. I'll be able to psych myself up by then. And you guys, this past weekend was my retreat. And of course, I'm getting ready to go, dreading it. Why did I sign up for this? I don't want to go. I had such a great time. It was so worthwhile. I can't tell you what a refreshing treat it was even. It was good for me to get away. And so I guess I'm a fan. I guess I want to encourage other listeners to if you need to go on a ladies retreat, because I talked to other women over the years too, and they were all like, oh, I hate ladies retreats. I think we all have this idea that we are going to just be miserable. And it actually was a really good time and worth going. And I didn't have to sleep with anybody. So that was a plus. I was on the bottom
there's some
bunk.
Conditions.
Yeah, I was on the bottom bunk. So, it wasn't like I was in a king-size bed in a Marriott, but still I had my own space, which really makes, I think, all the difference.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Pay for your own bed.
Yeah. So I just want to encourage women, if a retreat comes your way, go ahead and do it. There's probably things that you're going to get out of it that are more important than whether you lose a little bit of sleep.
Yes. And see, that kind of dread is totally different than going to the doctor dread, because pretty much most of the time that the women's retreat dread turns out to be a really, really happy memory.
It does. It does. All right, Mindy and Julie, I enjoyed talking with you about this. Julie, we want to know when those appointments are. Get on it.
Okay.
Listeners, you too. Go ahead and make those appointments, and we will talk to you next week.
All right.
Sounds great.
Okay, bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.